Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot, and today I've got an exciting video for you. It's another challenging approach. So what we're going to do is take the A320 for a really interesting, and I call this challenging in the sense that there are just some extra things you need to think about to make sure you don't end up getting a bit unstuck on the approach. So it's an interesting approach into an airport in Greece. We have been once before on a stream, but I thought it's worth revisiting in the Phoenix and also in the middle of summer, just so we can get a true taste of some of the challenges of this approach. So today I'm going to guide you through it, show you how to fly it in the Airbus, and also give you a bit of a clue of how we might manage some of the issues that you might find on these slightly more difficult style approaches. Today this will be into Kalamata in Greece. We'll fly the VOR Whiskey onto runway 17 right, which is quite a common approach to fly into Kalamata. And in the middle of summer like this, the temperature on the ground nice and hot, it can be a really interesting approach. We're going to fly close to terrain, we're going to fly a slightly steeper approach, and then we're going to land right by the sea. So really quite special. We'll be of course using the Fenix Simulations A320 in this fantastic My Travel livery. Absolutely love it. So this should be a good bit of fun. Before we do get started, I'd just like to remind you of our partnership with Apex Gaming PCs, where we have a line of custom 320 Sim Pilot PCs that you can also customize yourself on the website. If you do buy one, you'll be supporting the channel, and you can get a 5% discount with the code 320 Sim Pilot. I am of course a real-world Airbus pilot, but none of this is for any real-world use. It's just to give you some extra context on your home simulations and hopefully help you out in your Fenix A320 if you're trying to fly along at home. But this would of course apply to any of the Airbuses you might be choosing to use, including of course the fly-by-wire or the tow-list in MSFS X Plane and so on. Although I will be using Final App for today's approach, so that mode requires your simulator to be capable of the Final App approach mode. Right, let's get started. I'll be explaining what the Final App is going to do for us as we fly through, so don't worry, if you've never flown a VOR approach before, it will all be covered in the video. So here we are on the flight deck, and let's talk about what makes this approach so special. So this is going to be Lima Golf Kilo Lima is the code for it, and it's the, as I said, VOR Whiskey runway 17 right. Now it says 17 right, there is no 17 left that we can use commercially. It's closed or not for us. So what we're going to fly, as you can see, there's several ways to fly this approach. Most of them start from overhead of Kalamata, the VOR. Here's the airfield, and you would expect procedurally to fly outbound along here, around this DME arc, and then back in down this approach, descending to land. Now that's not really what airlines are going to do. It's not efficient. We don't like wasting time flying procedural approaches if we don't have to, and they have this helpful little line up here. So there is an alternative way to fly this, which is if we join the waypoint Anepi at flight level 100, we can fly from Anepi through to 17 miles on radio 267 from the Tango Romeo Lima. Yes, it does get a bit confusing. Then we make our left turn in towards the VOR and then fly that same approach. But this approach has its problems. It's not as simple as this nice big arc because we have less track miles to lose the height. You'll notice here we're flight level 100 at Anepi. As soon as you pass Anepi, you can descend 3,900 feet to 6,100. But the problem is, as soon as you start this left turn here and you're at 20 cam, you're pointing inbound and you need to start getting the height off, because after 18, you descend from 6.1 to 4.6. So, and that's in 3 miles, you need to lose a significant amount of height, and this carries on the whole way down. Put it another way, you're 18 miles from the VOR here, and if you remember my calculation for judging your loss of altitude, how much distance you'll need, is 3 times plus a little bit to lose the speed. So at 18 miles from the VOR, which is basically at the airfield, you're 6,000 feet. So that's bang on 3 degrees from here. You'll also notice the actual final descent angle when we get down to the platform is 3.5 degrees. So it's a slightly steeper final approach segment down towards the runway. Remember as well, this is in Greece, so this is a hot day here today. The temperature on the ground at the moment is only 28. It's a bit early, or it's a bit earlier in the afternoon, and it stayed a bit cooler today. It can get hotter, of course, but with a hot temperature, you get what's called a high density altitude. The air is thinner. So as we fly this approach, our true airspeed, which is shown to us down here on the navigation display, will actually be significantly higher than our actual airspeed through the air. You can see at the moment, up at flight level 100, we're at 250 knots, but we're going through the air, the true airspeed, at almost 300 knots. That's because the thinner air indicates slower on the PFD. And we fly based on the indicated airspeed. That's what matters to us, because of course that is how much air is going over the wings and the pressure we're getting, so therefore how much lift we can generate, and also how much overspeed pressure there is if we're going too fast. So this is the approach we'll fly. We'll go from Anepi, and we're going to descend down, and we're going to have to deal with terrain all around us. You can see lots and lots of terrain, so we will have the terrain display on, most certainly. We're then going to get stuck flying down a valley. Any winds or updrafts from this valley and the hot ground, which there will be liable to destabilize us and potentially cause an overspeed. And we're going to have real trouble because by the time we're around the turn, we need to be able to fly a 3-degree descent to the runway, which means we need to have the speed way, way, way back. So as we pass a Nepi, I'm going to be below 200 knots with at least flap 1 for this first descent, and then I'm going to put flap 2 out all the way out here. Not normal for an approach, but it's something I'm going to need to do to get the aircraft energy under control. With flap 2 out, remember flap 1 will only deploy the slats, but flap 2 will actually give us the flaps out the back, and then we'll get enough drag for the airplane to hopefully fly down the approach without accelerating. We may find that's still not good enough. If there's any sort of tailwind, updrafts, we may have to actually deploy the gear in order to keep the drag back. So if you're going somewhere on holiday and you hear the gear come out what seems a lot earlier than usual, it'll be for some reason like this. The airplane is unstable flying down the approach. It's trying to accelerate. There's too much lift and energy. Let's just get the speed right back now. So as I said, we're going to start off from an Epi. Another thing to remember, we're quite heavy today, 62 tons, although that's not too bad. I'm going to go for medium auto brake. And the actual landing itself from 3.5 degrees on the approach simply means we need to account for our flare to make sure we don't flare late because it's going to be a little bit steeper. But the runway itself is fine. You can see here 17 right is the middle runway and it's 2,700 meters, so plenty long enough. Medium is going to be more than enough for that. So let's load up the box. We of course select the airport, the arrival. We're flying the VOR Whiskey for 17 right and we're coming in via an Epi. The 2 stars aren't much use to us, but if we go to the approach vias, we're not via the cam, but what are we via? We're coming in not from Berap. Where's Respa? This is quite unusual coding. Let's see if we can try it out. So if I put in Respa, what does it give us? No, that's the wrong side, so let's try TRL. There's TRL, right. So that's that will be based on a different arrival. So, like I say, often a puzzle trying to set up these arrivals. So I'm going to insert that. I'd expect it to say an Epi actually. I want us to select heading track first, of course, because we're already on that leg. So we go heading. Now we can insert. And now I'm going to go back direct to an Epi. Too steep path ahead. So this warning message is very likely on an approach like this. What it's saying is, if I use fully managed modes, the airplane does not think it can fly the approach. Remember, the airplane in its database has all the information it needs. So if we clear that message, you can actually scroll through and find the leg where that's going to happen. So it's after FF, it's after 2,300 feet. It doesn't think it can fly down the final stage of the approach, which is not good news. So we are going to have to be aware that this managed, if we left it all in managed, the airplane doesn't think it would do it. Usually that just means using the speed brakes whilst we do it, or something similar. I'll just get rid of that message there. Right, so flight 100, which is where we're at, heading to an Epi, and let's just check through those constraints. So to do that, if I go to constraints on here, we'll zoom in and we'll go to plan. And now what I'm going to do is, if I can get the camera just right, scroll through. So an Epi, above flight of 100 for that leg, and then above 6-1 at they've different names here, but of course Quebec should be 17 miles, and then 6-1 all the way around the corner, then 4-6 once we're inbound, then CF-17 right at 3-7, which we can see down here, CF-17 right, 3,700 feet. Then we go down to our final platform of 2,300 feet. Now we're going to use what I called final app mode, which means basically I can press approach once we get down there. Now there are a few limitations on this. They're very much the same as RNAV. So I do have an RNAV tutorial available if you want to go and watch that, where I explain a bit about final app mode and its uses. But for us today, we have 2 options. We can fly this manually. I've done a lot of videos and streams flying manually VOR. So for this one, we're going to use final app because it's going to just let us focus on the energy management. What we need to do is look up the first point where the airplane thinks it needs to fly at the final descent, which is here. We can tell because it has the angle beneath it. So FF-17 right is the final descent from 2,300 feet, which actually ties in with our charts today. It doesn't matter if it doesn't. It could be further out, but whatever that means, we need to go to at least this point. But we're not going to cut any corners today. We're going to fly all these waypoints anyway. So what I'm going to do is I need to get myself down to 2,300 feet. I want to be almost there or an out star, and then arm approach. Now, if I'm not, it's not the end of the world. I just need to monitor very carefully the VDEV scale. Because what's going to happen is once I activate the approach phase, we'll get a VDEV scale on this side of the PFD, and that is going to be the airplane's targeted profile. But that's going to happen quite early on, but I'm going to ignore it until I get down to this later stage in the approach. I'm going to have to calculate everything else myself. So that's the flight plan stage done. RadNav, I'm going to have the cam VOR tuned because we could revert to a raw data approach. If we ended up with some sort of trouble with our airplane's navigation, we could fly raw nav aids. So cam 112.6 is correct. We'll put that into, of course, both sides. And then we're going to put in the inbound course of 166. So that just goes in underneath 166. Again, we're not really using this, but this is the more traditional. If you know about VOR approaches, this is the more traditional way. And then you can actually put this to VOR and you'll see there's your course bar. So you get a more standard style VOR. So we could revert to that if we have trouble with our aeroplane. For example, the GPS or the IRS is getting lost, or a map shift or anything like that. Great. Right, so flight level 100, that's where we've got to stay. It's a high QNH, so let's carry on setting this up. Progress page, Lima Golf Kilo, get it right, Lima Golf Kilo Lima, and then we're going to put in the runway of 17 right. This is going to be my clue to how many miles we have to run to the airfield, but that is a direct line. So it says 15 miles, but that's because that's from here over to the airport, just like that. We've obviously got a lot more track miles for now. Until we're pointing back in, that's not that useful. So there's perf next. It's still in the climb phase, actually. That's just because I have flown a very short sector to get here, so I'm just going to do that. So once enter destination data, and that's to set manage speed, but we're going to keep the speed back as we start this approach. Right, so perf. Next phase. Let's put in the QNH of 1010, slightly low QNH, which also means the pressure density altitude is a bit higher. 220 at 6. Because it's the reason you'll get this approach, 28 degrees on the ground, very hot, is because, of course, as the day warms up, you get the sea breeze, which is the hot air over the land heats up quicker than over the sea, so it rises, which draws in air off the sea, hence the sea breeze. So when you're by the beach later in the day, once it's warmed up, you typically get a breeze coming off the sea, and that is why. So that's what causes this approach to be very common here. Otherwise, you'd be landing with a tailwind if you go the other way. Finally, put in the minima, 560 for a continuous descent final approach, which just goes into barrow. No DH option here. If we go around, we straight ahead to the cam VOR. After you pass it, follow the radial, 21 miles, 3,400 feet. Whichever is earlier, a right turn, intercept to follow 190 and join at 9,000 or above. So it's a high missed approach altitude. We'll put in 9,000 feet in there. Fuel prediction, plenty of fuel. We've got 1 hour. I haven't got an alternate loaded at the moment. Secondary, I'm just going to copy that all into there in case we need it. Right, so there we go. That's all set up. We're heading to an epi, and we're going to descend to 6,100 feet on QNH of 1010 once we get past it. Now, as I said, this is all about managing workload. So what I'm going to do, let me get the checklist up, which is in here, and we'll run the approach checklist now, just to give ourselves a bit of an option. Now, to fly VOR, you do not press the LS push buttons. We do not need to press those as we go through flight level 100. But what we do need to do is make sure that at flight 100 in the descent, you'll make sure that your nav accuracy is high, which it is. I'm doing that because I want to use the final app mode. Right, documents, normal checklist, and we're going to go for approach. So let's go. That company message you can ignore. That's just the load sheet. So ECAM status is checked. We have no status message. We've got, in fact, before we do that, let's actually slow down the aircraft so we're ready to go. So I'm going to activate the approach phase. There you go. There's the VDEV and out. I'm going to go to flap 1, so we're below the marker. Flaps to 1. And as I said, I want to pass an epi, reducing on the speed so I can get flap 2 out if I need it. So we're not quite at an epi yet. So we have a couple of options here. Remember, from our managed modes, I could put in the platform altitude. And I can show you that now. Of, as we said, 2,300 feet. Which is down there. And then I can just go managed. Oh, 2.3, there it is. And what you'll see now is the airplane actually will level off for us anyway. So you get the out magenta at flight level 6.1. So we're descending to an altitude now. So I'm going to put in the QNH 1010. Oh, there it is. Because we need to, of course, as we descend to an altitude. And it's doing okay. It's doing okay. So there's a lot of terrain around us now. There are hills off to our left and right. And we are now, if I put the airplane on here, we're just coming in along this leg down to 6,100. But you'll see soon that this is going to get tricky as we turn onto the final approach. So continuing the approach checklist, ECAM status is checked. Approach type and runway VOR 17 right. We have our whiskey at Kalamata. We've got the minima of 560. and we've got the approach phase active. It would have automatically activated it later, but of course that's giving us more workload. Power F is on QNH of 1010, so that's all set up. So that's the approach set is complete, and we're going to let it descend down. So as you can see, it's going to level us off at 6,100 feet, which suggests to me that there's going to be a level segment which will allow us to get the energy back. So this is the conditions today working in our favour. You'll see there's a slight tailwind when we turn the corner though, and that's where it's potentially going to get tricky for us. We do have the LDEV option on this aircraft, but not all Airbuses have that. That depends what you have set up on the fit. Okay, well, we upload 10,000 feet. Let's get those landing lights on. This passengers are already strapped in. Round the corner we go. And here you go. Nose is dropping. It's still descending to 6.1. It's got 1,000 feet to go, but the speed is starting to accelerate. If we look straight in at the runway, we're now 19 miles out at 7,000 feet. So think about that. We actually need to be, for 7,000 feet, you need 21 miles plus a little bit to slow down. So energy is becoming a problem. Let's go to flaps 2. Speed is below the marker. Flaps to 2. And now the flaps come out on the back of the wing and they give us an opportunity to get some drag. It's going to level off only temporarily at 6.1, I think, because fairly shortly after that we're heading straight down to 4.6. You can see it struggling with the bumps off the hills. You've got a tailwind as well, and there'll be thermals coming off of this sort of hill. I do need my VOR needle displayed so I can check that we are actually intercepting the 166 track, which I can see. Or 166 radial, I should say. 6.1 now, it should go down to 4.6. And to show you on the chart. Oh, we've lost that. There it is. We are now here, so descending to 15 miles at 4,600 feet. So in 2 miles, we need to be down at 4.6. And remember, this all needs to end with us getting to 2,300 feet. But if we go to flight plan, it doesn't think it can do it after the... Actually, that's after the 2,300, so we'll have to see, but we'll have to fully configure the airplane to make sure it manages that. So 5,500 feet, 16 miles. It's getting a little bit high. I can actually see the level up arrow. It thinks it will reach 2,300 feet, which you'll see now is blue. So the reason that's blue here is because it knows it's going to be higher than 4,600 and 3,700, so it doesn't show it to us anymore. It thinks it will level off at 2.3. I'm not happy about that. We've done well with the energy by getting flap 2 out, so I need to actually put the airplane down a little bit quicker. So I'm going to force it into vertical speed. But here's the catch. I want to try and drive the airplane down quicker. I put it into vertical speed. The problem is now we've got 2,300 feet in the window, not 4.6 or 3.7. So the risk here is that because I've gone to vertical speed, it will no longer obey the constraints. It will go straight down to 2.3. So I have to make sure I do those myself. So I'm confident I'm going to watch those and manage that. So I'm going to go to 1,400 feet per minute. I can actually let the airplane accelerate a little. We've done really well with the energy. I was hoping for a bit more of a view. But yeah, you have terrain all around you. This stuff is high, high, high around you, both sides and over your shoulder over there. So we're getting slightly below the profile, which is good. So I'm going to level off just before FF. Speed is way back, so this has worked out nicely. Very happy with this. Bit hot in the cabin at 25. Let's turn that down. We're working hard, so we'll have it nice and cool up here. And you can see we've got up to 150 knots, but no problem, even with a light tailwind. Notice our indicated airspeed of 150 knots, which is pretty slow, and we are going through the air at 162 knots. Okay, let's set that back to 1,000. Let's set that arrow somewhere sensible. There's the runway. Remember, we're going for the 17 right, so a little bit of a confusing picture. So we need to make sure we get the right one, as we saw on the ground charts. That is going to be yeah, clearly the one on the right. So don't be confused by those pappies drawing you over to that side. Okay, so so far, so normal for an approach. Remember, this is a VOR, so we're checking with our DME. We'd also check our altitudes, but we get to our platform altitude here. Once it's in out star, there's the radio altimeter comes to life. Very important that we check that. That is could happen early, but today it's worked out all right. That's about sensible. 2,500 feet matches the altimeter. There's out star. So now I'm going to press approach. Gives us app nav final blue. App nav telling us that laterally it's following the course, and I can see my VOR pointing straight at the VOR on 166, so that's great. And final blue is armed, so it gives us the blue down arrow at the final fix. Like I say, not the most efficient approach ever, but if you come down this approach fast, you could find yourself just unraveling, especially further back there. You can see the terrain display giving away all of those high peaks around us. Now, it could be a little bit uncomfortable. You might find if you're sitting right at or too close to the airplane's a little bit unstable with the nose up there. So some people might be tempted to increase the speed. But if you do, and I mean just increasing it a little bit, you need to make sure you manage it in time for final lap, which is there. So I can now set the go-around altitude in of 9,000 feet. And down the nose goes. Remember, 3.5 degrees. This is steep, and the airplane doesn't think it's going to manage, which is not ideal, but we're going to monitor it closely. And to help it out now, we're going to drop the gear, arm the ground spoilers, put the last lights on. Speed's starting to run away or just trickling up, which is no good because we need to stabilize in 900 feet, and it's still increasing. We have now gained a headwind, so that's going to help us out a little bit. So we're going to go to flaps 3 and flaps to full. And what I'm going to do is just use a little bit of the head tracking for landing. So let's do a landing checklist. Auto brake is on medium. Missed approach altitude 9,000 feet is set. And the ECAM memo landing no blue. So landing checklist complete. We're clear to land. Slightly out of line because remember we're pointing towards the VOR, which is not at the end of the runway like an ILS would be. It's slightly off to the side, so you end up with these slight angles. However, the missed approach is coded straight to... Actually, is it? 17 right, MA. No, what I'm going to do is disconnect the autopilot, turn off the flight directors, and turn the bird on, and we'll go from there. So we'll go through the head tracking. There we go. And I'm going to disconnect the autopilots. We are stable. Flight directors off. Bird on. And there we go. So I'm just going to gently head over. Remember, we're landing on the right, not the one with the pappies. That's a Microsoft Flight Simulator thing. Keeping that vertical speed, so there you can see I've just pulled up slightly. The VDEV scale is still useful to us, but it's not our primary reference. 1100 feet per minute is a bit too fast, so let's keep it steady. You can see there's still terrain beneath us here. We're at 700 feet, but there's about 150 feet terrain beneath us. Thankfully, we are very visual.
500. Minimum.
So 6 knot headwind, all working out. Disregarding that very tempting lit and peppy runway on the left. Just driving the airplane towards that center point. So here we go then. Looking out, keeping that vertical speed under control. 800 feet per minute looks good. Feet up on the pedals for landing. We haven't got much of a touchdown zone marker, so we're going to just make sure it's a sensible sort of flare. Sinking a bit fast here. Turning to stable.
50, 40, 30, 20, retard.
Idle. Now, easy to float on a hot runway like this. There we go. Reverse is out. Spoilers, reverse screen, decel. Could be tempting to use the reversers. Probably, if you're worried about hot brakes on an approach like this, you'd go low auto brake and max reverse, and that way you can put more of the strain into the reversers. But there we go, manual brakes, turn those off. And welcome to Kalamata. So that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been interesting for you. This is a really fun approach, and it's one I like to fly. It's quite spectacular, especially if there aren't quite as many clouds around, but that does give you the full effect of popping in and out of clouds and having terrain around you, something you really need to keep an eye on and keep on top of everything. Keep your situational awareness high and keep that workload under control. It's all about energy management for this approach, as you saw, so that worked out quite well. Hopefully it looked quite calm, but if you give it a go yourselves, you might find if you try and experiment a bit that it can unstick quite easily. There'll be plenty more videos, live streams, guides coming on the channel soon, including of course lots with the Airbus and other airliners, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see those. We'll see you again in another video or live stream soon. Thank you for watching, bye bye.